The grand ballroom of the Hilton Grand Hotel glittered with chandeliers and soft golden lights. Elegant guests in designer suits and sparkling gowns filled the room, sipping champagne and chatting about business deals, charity projects, and the latest social gossip. A live orchestra played soft jazz in the corner, giving the evening a luxurious and calm atmosphere. Tonight was special. It was the annual City Leadership Awards, where successful entrepreneurs, community leaders, and influential personalities were honored for their achievements. Among the crowd stood Marcus Reed, a quiet black man in a well-tailored gray suit. His posture was straight, his expression calm, and his eyes thoughtful. Marcus was not the loudest person in the room, nor the richest. But his name had recently been making headlines. Just weeks earlier, Marcus had been nominated for the award, Father of the Year. But not everyone in the room believed he deserved it. Across the hall stood Vanessa Carter, a wealthy socialite known for her sharp tongue and judgmental attitude. She wore a glamorous blue dress and a confident smile that often hid her arrogance. As Marcus walked past her table, Vanessa looked him up and down with obvious disdain. Then she laughed, not a polite laugh, a loud, mocking laugh. "Father of the Year," she said sarcastically, leaning forward. "That's the joke of the night." Several guests turned their heads. Marcus stopped walking but remained calm. Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Tell me something, Marcus," she said loudly. "How does a man who grew up in a broken neighborhood suddenly become the perfect father?" The room grew quieter. Some guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a slow breath and looked at her calmly. But Vanessa wasn't done. "I mean seriously," she continued. "A single dad, working 2 jobs, raising a kid alone, sounds more like a struggle story than a success story." A few people laughed nervously. Marcus simply adjusted his tie. Before he could answer, the ballroom doors opened. A woman stepped inside. She wore a stunning golden evening gown that shimmered under the lights. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly, and her confident walk instantly drew attention from everyone in the room. People began whispering, "Is that?" "Yes, it is." It was Claire Whitmore. Claire Whitmore was one of the most respected investigative journalists in America. She had exposed corrupt politicians, dishonest corporations, and major scandals. But tonight, she wasn't there as a reporter. She was there as a guest of honor. And she was walking directly toward Marcus. Vanessa noticed and suddenly became silent. Claire stopped in front of Marcus and smiled warmly. "Marcus Reed," she said. "I'm glad I found you." Marcus looked surprised. "Ms. Whitmore." Claire nodded. "Please," she said, "call me Claire." Vanessa crossed her arms impatiently. "Well," she interrupted, "are we missing something important here?" Claire slowly turned toward Vanessa. Her expression became serious. "Yes," she said calmly. "You are." The room grew silent again. Claire stepped forward so everyone could hear her. "I've spent the last 3 months investigating Marcus Reed," she said. Vanessa smirked. "Oh, this should be interesting." Claire ignored her and continued. "What I found wasn't scandal," she said. "It was something much more powerful." The guests leaned closer. Claire looked around the room. 5 years ago," she said, "Marcus Reed lost his wife to a tragic car accident." Marcus lowered his eyes slightly. The memory still hurt. Claire continued. "He was left alone to raise his 5-year-old daughter, Lily." A soft murmur spread through the room. Vanessa's smile faded slightly. Claire spoke. "Again, Marcus worked construction during the day and drove for a delivery service at night," she said. "Not to become rich, not to gain fame, but simply to make sure his daughter never went to bed hungry." The room was completely silent now. Claire continued her story. "Every morning," she said, "Marcus woke up at 5 a.m., made breakfast for Lily, braided her hair, packed her school lunch, and walked her to school before going to work." Several guests looked visibly moved. "But that's not all," Claire added. She held up a small folder. "This nomination for Father of the Year didn't come from a company, a politician, or a celebrity." She paused. "It came from Lily's school principal." Vanessa frowned. Claire opened the folder. "Over the past 4 years," she continued, "Marcus has volunteered more than 800 hours at his daughter's school." Gasps spread across the room. "He helps children with homework," Claire said. fixes broken desks, organizes food drives for struggling families. Marcus shifted slightly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Claire smiled gently. And every Christmas, she said, he secretly buys gifts for students whose parents cannot afford them. The ballroom filled with whispers. Vanessa's confident expression had completely disappeared. But Claire wasn't finished. She turned toward Vanessa. You asked how a man from a broken neighborhood could become Father of the Year. She paused. Then she said something that stunned the entire room. Because he didn't let his past define him. Claire stepped closer to Marcus. He chose to become the father he never had. The room erupted in applause. Some people even stood up. Marcus looked overwhelmed. Vanessa, however, looked embarrassed. She tried to recover her composure. Well, she said awkwardly, that's touching. But awards like this are usually for people who make a bigger impact. Claire smiled slightly. Oh, she said, you mean like saving a life? Vanessa blinked. What? Claire opened another page in the folder. Last winter, she said, Marcus was driving during a snowstorm when he saw a car crash into a frozen lake. The audience gasped. Claire continued. Without hesitation, Marcus jumped into the freezing water and pulled a trapped mother and her young son out of the car. A shocked silence filled the ballroom. The boy survived, Claire said softly. Because of him. Marcus looked down, clearly uncomfortable. He had never talked about that night publicly. Claire closed the folder. So yes, she said calmly, looking at Vanessa, I believe Marcus Reed deserves this award. The applause grew even louder. Even people who didn't know Marcus before were now clapping proudly. Vanessa looked around the room. For the first time in years, she had nothing to say. Just then, the host of the event stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, smiling widely, it seems the perfect moment has arrived. He held an envelope in his hand. The winner of tonight's Father of the Year award is. He paused for dramatic effect. Marcus Reed. The ballroom exploded with cheers. Marcus stood frozen for a moment. Then Claire gently nudged him forward. Go, she whispered with a smile. Marcus slowly walked toward the stage. The applause followed him every step of the way. When he reached the microphone, the room became quiet again. Marcus looked out at the crowd. He took a deep breath. I'm not a perfect father, he said honestly. But every day I try to be better, because my daughter deserves the best version of me. The audience listened carefully. Marcus smiled softly. My little girl once asked me something, he continued. She said, Daddy, are heroes real? He paused. I told her yes. Then he added quietly, because heroes are just people who choose love over excuses. The room fell into a powerful silence. Then the applause returned, louder than ever. Some guests were wiping away tears. Even Vanessa looked humbled. As Marcus stepped off the stage, Claire shook his hand. You didn't just win an award tonight, she said. You reminded everyone what real success looks like. Across the room, the doors opened again. A small girl ran inside. Daddy. It was Lily. Marcus knelt down and hugged her tightly. Did you win? She asked excitedly. Marcus smiled and showed her the trophy. Lily's eyes lit up. I knew it, she said proudly. The entire ballroom watched the moment with warm smiles. Because sometimes the greatest victories aren't about money, fame, or status. Sometimes they're about love, and the courage to be the father a child needs. Message. True greatness isn't measured by wealth or power, but by love, sacrifice, and the quiet strength of a parent who never gives up on their child. Heart.